The superpower race for Greenland has already begun, and most people have no idea it's even happening. Right now, underneath the ice, inside closed-door summits, and along coastlines that barely appear on standard maps, three of the world's most powerful nations are maneuvering for control of a territory that could define the next century of global power. By the end of this video, you will never look at Greenland the same way again, because this isn't a story about a remote Arctic island. This is a story about the future of the world, and the race to own it. Here's the problem. Most people think of Greenland as an afterthought, a cold, empty place near the top of a map. Maybe you've heard about it because of some politically controversial purchase offer that made headlines and then disappeared from the news cycle. But that moment, that apparently absurd suggestion, was not a joke. It was a signal, and the other superpowers already understood what it meant long before the rest of us caught up. And in a moment, you'll see exactly why. Let's start with the geography, because this is where everything breaks open. Greenland is the world's largest island, covering more than 2 million square kilometers. To put that in perspective, that's roughly the size of Western Europe. And yet, it has a population of only around 57,000 people, most of them concentrated along the southwestern coast, near the capital, Nuuk. The interior? Almost entirely covered by an ice sheet that reaches depths of over 3 kilometers in some places. From the outside, it looks like a frozen nowhere. But here's the part people miss. Location is everything in geopolitics, and Greenland's location is nothing short of extraordinary. Sit Greenland on a globe instead of a flat map, and suddenly everything shifts. It sits directly between North America and Europe. It controls access to the Arctic Ocean, and as global warming reshapes the polar ice, those Arctic sea routes, once considered fantasy, are becoming real, viable shipping corridors. The Northern Sea Route, the Northwest Passage, the Transpolar Route. These aren't science fiction anymore. They're the trade routes of the near future. And whoever controls the high Arctic controls access to all of them. And in a moment, you'll understand why that changes absolutely everything about the strategic value of this island. Now, here's where the story gets wild. Greenland doesn't just sit in the right place. It's also sitting on top of one of the most mineral-rich territories on Earth. Surveys and geological assessments suggest the island holds vast deposits of rare earth elements, the materials that power electric vehicle batteries, smartphones, wind turbines, and military-grade electronics. Some estimates referenced by researchers and think tanks indicate Greenland may contain a significant share of the world's known rare earth reserves. It also holds substantial deposits of uranium, zinc, iron ore, and potentially oil and gas reserves beneath its continental shelf. The world is racing toward clean energy, and clean energy requires rare earth minerals. You cannot build the future without them. And Greenland might be sitting on the largest untapped supply left on the planet. That is not a coincidence anymore. That is a target. If you enjoy these deep dives into geography, maps, and hidden geopolitical stories, consider subscribing. There's a lot more where this came from. Now, back to the superpowers, because this is where it gets genuinely tense. The United States has maintained a military presence in Greenland since World War II. Thule Air Base, located in the northwestern part of the island, is one of America's most strategically critical installations in the world. It hosts ballistic missile early warning systems. It monitors Russian submarine movements. It sits close enough to polar routes that it could detect an intercontinental ballistic missile launch within minutes. American military planners have never forgotten what Thule represents, and they never will. Reports suggest that in recent years, American interest in expanding its footprint in Greenland has intensified considerably, driven by concerns about what other powers are doing there. And in a moment, you'll see exactly what those concerns are. China is the part of this story that most mainstream coverage glosses over. Beijing has shown persistent interest in Greenland for over a decade. Chinese companies have attempted to acquire mining rights on the island. Some of those bids were blocked, quietly, with little fanfare. after pressure from Denmark and the United States. There were also reported proposals involving Chinese companies building infrastructure, including airports, in Greenland. Denmark ultimately rejected those proposals amid security concerns. But the pattern is undeniable. China is systematically trying to establish a presence in the Arctic through economic entry points, and Greenland is one of the most attractive doors. This is China's playbook applied globally: ports, mines, infrastructure, and the Arctic is simply the next frontier. And in a moment, you'll see why that terrifies Western defense analysts. Russia is the third piece of this triangle, and Russia's Arctic ambitions are not subtle. Moscow has been militarizing its Arctic coast for years. It has reopened Cold War-era military bases, built new icebreaker fleets, both civilian and nuclear-powered, and established a legal claim over a vast section of the Arctic seabed through the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Russia argues its continental shelf extends deep into the Arctic Ocean, potentially encompassing some of the most resource-rich underwater territory on Earth. Russian officials have spoken openly about the Arctic as a zone of strategic priority. And as the ice retreats, those shipping lanes become less theoretical and more operational every single year. Russia already has the infrastructure. The question is what everyone else does in response. And what's happening right now is genuinely alarming. Here's the plot twist nobody fully predicted. Greenland itself is changing the equation. The island is an autonomous territory within the Kingdom of Denmark, but its parliament, the Inatsisartut, has been pushing for greater independence for years. Many Greenlandic leaders, including prominent figures in the governing Inuit Ataqatigiit party, have openly stated that full independence is the long-term goal. And this creates one of the most extraordinary geopolitical paradoxes of our time. The very place that three superpowers are racing to influence or control is in the process of potentially becoming its own sovereign nation. Think about what that means for a moment. An independent Greenland would need to establish its own foreign policy, its own defense arrangements, its own economic partnerships. It would be a small, newly sovereign Arctic state, sitting in the most strategically important geographic position on Earth. And every superpower in the world would be lining up to offer it something. The leverage that Greenland's government could theoretically hold in that scenario is staggering. But independence is complicated, and here is where the human reality of this story matters. Greenland's economy is heavily subsidized by Denmark. Annual block grants amount to roughly $500 million per year, representing a substantial portion of the island's total budget. Without that subsidy, an independent Greenland would need to develop its own revenue base, almost certainly through resource extraction. That means mining. That means outside investment. And outside investment means choosing partners, which is precisely where the superpower competition becomes personal for Greenlanders themselves. Some residents and political figures welcome economic development. Others fear what it would mean for the environment, for Inuit culture, for the land their ancestors have lived on for thousands of years. The ice sheet, the fjords, the migration patterns of the wildlife. These are not abstract concerns. They are the lived reality of 57,000 people caught between global ambitions they did not ask for. And in a moment, you'll see how this tension played out in one very specific way that almost nobody reported on internationally. In 2021, Greenland's elections were partly shaped by debate over a massive rare earth mining project at Kvanefjeld in the south of the island. The project, proposed by an Australian-listed company with significant Chinese investment, was one of the largest potential rare earth and uranium developments on the planet. The election result? The pro-environment, anti-mining party won. The project was effectively blocked. In a single local election, Greenlandic voters sent a message that echoed in Beijing, Washington, and Copenhagen simultaneously. The people actually living in Greenland have a vote in what happens to Greenland. That sounds obvious, but in the context of superpower competition, it is genuinely radical. This is why Greenland matters in a way that goes beyond rare earth deposits and military radar arrays. It is a place where the biggest forces reshaping the 21st century are colliding in real time. climate change, great power rivalry, indigenous sovereignty, resource competition, and the redrawing of Arctic geography. The ice is melting faster than almost any scientific model predicted a decade ago. As it retreats, it reveals both opportunity and catastrophe simultaneously. New coastlines emerge, new shipping corridors open, ancient permafrost releases gases that accelerate warming further, and the military and economic chess pieces keep moving across a board that is literally changing shape beneath them. The race for Greenland is not a future scenario. It is not a hypothetical. Defense analysts, Arctic researchers, and strategic policy institutions across Europe and North America have consistently flagged the island as one of the most consequential geopolitical flashpoints of the coming decades. Reports from organizations such as the Arctic Council and various national defense ministries have highlighted increasing militarization and competition in the region. The pattern is clear to anyone paying attention. Greenland is not just a frozen island on the edge of a map. It is the center of a new map, one that the world's most powerful nations are already drawing. Here's what's wild about all of this. Most people still picture Greenland as an afterthought, a place too cold and too remote to really matter. And that assumption, that comfortable, decades-old assumption, is exactly what makes the superpower race so dangerous. Because when the public isn't paying attention, decisions get made anyway. Bases get expanded. Mining contracts get negotiated. Strategic partnerships get quietly established. And by the time the rest of the world looks up from the standard Mercator projection and actually sees Greenland as it is, massive, central, indispensable, the pieces may already be in place. By now, you understand something that most people don't. The race for Greenland has already begun. The starting gun fired years ago, and the island sitting at the top of the world, home to ancient fjords and a people who have survived conditions that would break most civilizations, is now at the center of a competition that will shape global power for generations. Whether Greenland becomes independent, remains Danish, gets pulled into the orbit of American security infrastructure, becomes a target of Chinese economic influence, or finds some entirely new path that no one has charted yet. That story is still being written. And it's being written right now. If this video gave you a new perspective on how maps and geography shape global power, leave a like. It genuinely helps. Subscribe if you want more deep dives like this one, and drop a comment below with your answer to this question. Do you think Greenland will become more important to global politics in the next 20 years than it is today? That debate is just getting started. The link to more videos is in the description.